Okay, I think we can start now. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Today we are going to talk about the curative medicinal properties of weeds. So a few weeks ago I did a workshop on edible weeds, and normally, you know, when you think about weeds, you think about destruction, it's come out, it's just a nuisance, it's just bad. If you think about weeds, negative thoughts come to mind. But actually, they have such amazing properties. They have environmental properties, so they do a lot of help for the soil and the surrounding areas, in that it improves the soil in various different ways. So the different types of plants improve it in different ways, and at least the different herbs, weeds. And then you get the culinary properties as to how you can actually use it to eat. So there are lots of grasses that you can also use, and you can make flour from it. There's ancient grains all around you. So there's a lot of ways you can substitute weeds into your diet. So it can actually bring down the cost of your budget of your diet if you know which weeds are edible, and they have a lot of nutrient value. And then today we're going to talk about the medicinal value. So how you can use whatever is growing around you for different types of ailments. I just want to start with Psalms 104, verse 14 to 15. He causes the grass to grow for cattle and herbs for the service of man. So God's intention was always to have the purpose of the plants that we have around us, whether they are weeds or herbs or just pretty plants, that they actually have value in terms of what we can eat and to use it for medicine as well. And it's always good to know, especially with the cost of living that is really increasing phenomenally. You know, we find that we don't have money. I mean, just a doctor's consultation is ridiculously expensive, or you have to sit whole day at the day hospital. And so it really becomes a burden, so to say. And you almost hope that you never get sick, because what are you going to do when you do get sick? But God has blessed us with so many wonderful weeds around us that we can actually use for medicinal properties, whatever our different ailments may be. And so weeds have a sustainable purpose, and they have a medicinal and culinary purpose, as I mentioned before. And they are very rich in vitamins, in nutrients, in minerals, in antioxidants. So it is good to try and supplement them into your diet, but also then to use as medicine. And so we can try and get away from the conventional medicine and sort of move to a natural medicine. So we know about herbs and we know about the medicinal value of herbs, but now we are going to delve into weeds and the medicinal value of weeds. So there are three factors that they cover. They cover the nutrient density, which just means they have lots of nutrients and vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin K. They have iron, they have potassium, they have calcium, and all other vital nutrients that our bodies actually need. So we can also drink it in teas. We don't have to incorporate it into our food if we don't want to. Then that has therapeutic uses, which naturally is, you know, for medicinal purposes. So they can act as diuretics, they can act with inflammation, they can help with respiratory problems. You need to know which weeds can be used for what. And then they have sustainable resources, where they actually empower the soil, they empower the ecosystem. The young lady over here was talking about how she uses these herbs as a companion planting, in terms of they draw and attract the pests away from your vegetables in your garden. So they have very good purposes, and they also attract the animals that is needed, like the um, but what is that? The ladybirds. There we go. Those types of animals that are actually very beneficial. And like they have very bright flowers, that also is what attracts these animals, so that they can be, what is the word? There we go, pollination, my word.
Yes, how many we could buy ladybirds in There's overseas they sell it. Yeah.
I've never seen ladybirds.
But the problem is how to keep it in your garden.
Yeah, I've never actually heard of ladybirds.
At least the flowers, beneficial flowers you have.
Yeah.
Some more ladybirds you can actually
Yeah.
Because people doesn't like gardening anymore. That's why you don't see them anymore.
Exactly, because we're starting to live in a concrete jungle.
Concrete jungle.
Yeah, and unfortunately people pull out their weeds, and those weeds are actually the things that draw and attract those ladybirds and other animals that are beneficial for your garden. Okay, so what is important, best practices for harvesting, for foraging and preservation is that you need to identify them correctly. So don't just pick and think, okay, this is that and I'm going to use it for that. Identification is very important, because if you misuse it, it could be toxic. So if you are not sure, Google is a great friend that you can use. There are books also about medicinal weeds, and then just ask someone that's knowledgeable if you are not sure. Another thing is that there are lots of lookalikes. So something you might think is, for example, this, and you think it will help with this, but then actually it is a lookalike and it could be toxic. So it is very important to identify correctly if you want to go into using weeds for medicine. For example, dandelions and sow thistle. They look the same. They are often confused because they both have yellow flowers. They are both termed as weeds, but they have very different purposes. And even though sow thistle is not toxic, it also is medicinal. It is not dandelion, so the medicinal usage of it is different to the dandelion, and dandelion has a lot more benefits, health benefits. So that's just an example of how you can confuse the two. So you need to be very, very careful. Okay? When you are harvesting, it is important to harvest sustainably, and that simply means rather go and pick from an area where there's a lot of weeds. Also pick from the mature weeds, not the small ones, so that the small ones can still grow. And then pick sporadically, like here and there, so that you are not like killing a certain area. Because if you just pick from one area the whole time, it's going to die out in that area. So try and pick all over, but be sustainable, because you still want them to grow, because they do serve a very good purpose in the end. And then you want to avoid contaminated areas that are close to roads where there's lots of pollution, from the car smoke, areas where there will be lots of pesticides being sprayed. So those types of things you need to consider when you are picking your weeds. So it would be best to pick it from your own garden, or a field where is far away from lots of pollution or smoke or whatever type of thing might contaminate the plant. And then the different preparation methods that you can use it for is you can make tinctures and teas. That's basically, tinctures is where you use a percentage of alcohol to draw out the active ingredients in the herbs. And then your teas, as you know, is also called a decoction, and that is simply where you just let it steep. You pour hot water over it and you let it steep or boil. That will also draw out the active ingredients in there. There's poultices and compressors or compressions. So that is when you use it topically, like in a band-aid type of scenario. So a poultice basically is when you take a piece of cloth and you, for instance, you mash up the leaf of the plant, and you put it in the poultice and you cover it, and then you put it on the wound or whatever the area is that you are going to use it for. A compression is when you take the piece of cloth and you lay it or soak it into the fluid or the mixture of what you just mashed up, and that you then put on. So the one is dry and the one is wet. That is the difference between a compression and a poultice. And then obviously cooking you can use, and then obviously you would eat it in that format. And just be very careful, because some weeds you mustn't use too much. So always err on the side of caution. Then we want to use everything possible around us to learn to be sustainable, especially for the reasons that I mentioned before: cost of living, medical aids and doctors' costs is crazy high. So, but not only that, pharmaceutical medication is known to somewhat have contraindications. So that basically means that it will maybe cause another problem. And that's why most people have to take more medication to counteract that problem from the first medication. So in essence, you kind of have to stay on medication if you have something like diabetes or high blood pressure, a lifestyle disease, because it's ongoing. And you want to get into a state of being healthier, where you can wean yourself off those medications. So firstly, you have to change your diet, and secondly, exercise, and thirdly, try and incorporate herbs and weeds into your medicinal practices. So, but always check with your practitioner, your doctor, or whoever saying to you, can I use this, can I supplement this for that, because it's got these properties, etc. How? Some weeds might have an adverse effect on the medication that you are using, but most, like 99% of the time, it doesn't, but it could. So just always be careful, and don't just go off your medication. That is very dangerous. Always speak to your health practitioner, and if you want to wean yourself off, wean off slowly, but do it in the right way, and always consult someone before doing it. We want to get our bodies into a much healthier state. So trying to use natural medicine and natural weeds that have medicinal properties, we need to start incorporating it in our daily lives, so that our bodies can get used to these actives and know how to respond to it. So today I'm going to speak about the main areas that we mainly use it for. That would be your skin, respiratory problems, and joint health, for example. So weeds for skin, they have bioactive compounds which help the skin with anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, antioxidant properties, and so it helps with wounds, with rashes, with scrapes, with cuts, any type of skin inflammation. That is what weeds with skin properties can help with. So the first weed I want to talk about is plantain. Now plantain grows crazy everywhere. I didn't have it home. Because it's change of season, a lot of them are dying out and others are starting to grow. So the ones that I will be speaking about today is not very readily available at the moment. But plantain you will see everywhere. You get two different types. You get broadleaf, which is a fat leaf and it's got like little ribbons on it. And then you get the thin leaf, which is a long thin stem. Now, in the Western Cape, the main one is the thin leaf plantain. And plantain has a lot of medicinal properties. But it is also termed as a skin salve. That is what they call plantain when they use it for skin. Because it helps with wound healing. So it contains an active called allantoin, and this allantoin helps with cell regeneration. So it will help rebuild and heal any types of wounds, basically. And so you can use it in a poultice, as I mentioned before. A poultice, you will be, grinding it down, mashing it up, chopping it, or whatever the case may be. And then you put it into or onto the fabric, and then you put it onto the cut, rash, whatever you have. Or you can make a soothing ointment. I'm going to do a little demonstration of how to make an ointment later. But once again, this is about teaching you how to be sustainable in using what you have at your disposal, because life is expensive. So we need to learn what we can use in place of, Just because you have a scrape or a rash or something doesn't mean you need to go and get this specific cream, because that is the only thing that will help. There are weeds and herbs that can do the job just as well. You just need to know what they are.
But the pharmacies they're also exploiting the situation. They know that most of people go for herbs nowadays. But now the herbs at the chemist is more expensive than so it's better
Yes.
It's
make your
become
own.
its own thriving market. Like there was a lady by the last herbal club, so she gave us mulai
Mullin,
mix.
yeah.
And then I said to her, 2 years before I went to go get just like 10 tea bags. It's 2 years prior to this now. And I paid almost 100 rand for my 10 tea bags. And I mean, it's a weed that will literally, if the season is properly, it will take 30 days to grow. And then it grows like everywhere.
Yeah.
So we really have to inform ourselves instead of giving corporations and the pharmaceutical companies and the hospitals and the doctors all our money. It's not on.
Absolutely, but what you can also do is you can start your own little business by making your own little medicines and selling it. Because, as you mentioned, they do exploit it, so you find that medicinal herbs in the shops are much more expensive because people now want to go natural and sustainable. So it is much more expensive, but also they want to keep you enslaved in the pharmaceutical trap, so to say. But it is up to you what you want to do. Knowledge is power, and what you do about it can empower you. So you can start a business if you want to, or you can just use it for your personal and family health and welfare.
I know someone who's making, I can't get to the name, such a big leaf that they use also for fertility in the ground.
Comfrey.
Comfrey. She's making this off, she's selling it in Mowbray market.
Yes.
That was also a year ago. She started 16.
Yes.
For a little bit.
So comfrey, I was gonna speak about it, but let me just speak about it now. Comfrey is also one of those weeds that grow like crazy. It has amazing properties for the garden as a fertilizer, but also medicinally. It's called the knitbone plant. So it also has cell regenerative properties and can literally grow back bone. If you lose a finger or break or whatever, it can grow it back. You just have to do it in the right way. And it heals wounds, especially topically, so amazingly. So comfrey is really a good plant that you can weed that you can use medicinally and for your garden. The next one I want to talk about is chickweed. It's this little plant. It has little oval type of leaf. It's very small, but they grow a lot in little bunches, and it has small little white flowers on it. So chickweed has anti-inflammatory properties. So it helps with irritation and it has cooling effects also. So you can use it in a compress and a poultice by mashing up the leaves and putting it onto the cloth, etc. Or you can infuse it into creams. So you can make a body lotion using maybe tallow or it depends on what you want to use. You could use coconut oil, you could use shea butter. There's various different things that you can use if you want to make a cream, like a body cream, or you can make an ointment or salve. So again, you can use coconut oil, you can use olive oil, you can use jojoba oil, almond oil. These carrier oils are what you use for these medicinal types of creams that you will make. So those are the different types of ways that you can use chickweed. So if you have an inflammation in that it's a lot of redness and you don't know what's going on and it's itching a lot, this will soothe it, calm that inflamed feeling and take away the itch. And it will also help with whatever, it will have the anti-inflammatory effect as well. Then we have stinging nettle. I couldn't find any stinging nettle, but I'm sure we all know what stinging nettle is. It has a very specific.
Got so much coming up right now.
I
and
don't
I'm
have
not-
any.
I'm not
But
putting
yeah, it is. When I was growing up, it was a big no-no. You know, because it would always hurt you whenever, you know, it would sting, right? Because it has these little hairs that has that sort of, not poison, but it has that type of effect when you touch it.
It burns.
burns a
It
little.
burns. But that stinging effect is actually medicinal for people with arthritis
Yes.
because it activates the antihistamine effect in your body. So it then rushes those antihistamine and anti-inflammatory antibodies and all those things to the area, and then it actually helps ease the pain of arthritis and it helps with the inflammation as well. That is if you now really want to, if you are in a lot of pain and you really, it's like a shock treatment type of thing. So you just knock yourself against stinging nettle if you have.
But only for 60 seconds, because there's a guy in Scotland that actually spoke about it like just last week. And he's young, like he's in his 30s. So he takes the stinging nettle, he says 60 seconds of pain for hours of relief.
Yeah.
So he takes it and he literally like hits it underneath his feet and on his legs and on his arms and hands. I think he's braver than most. Then he takes some and he puts it in like super long woolly socks and he actually wears it like for another 2 minutes and then he takes it off. But you mustn't scratch and you mustn't wash it off.
Yes,
Just let
because it needs time to work
to
into your
work
body.
into your bloodstream. And I can attest, one day I was cleaning a garden and my son who's little and hyperactive, like he went for it and I was just being protective and I got him out of the way and I got stinging nettle all over me in shorts and a little t-shirt. And there was no time to scratch or anything, there was only time to save the kid. 15 minutes later, I forgot even that my skin was stinging and I was quite okay. So, don't
So,
scratch.
yeah, it has great medicinal properties when you are stung by stinging nettle. However, everything in moderation. But the best way for when using it for anti-inflammatory properties is to preferably put on a glove and then cut it. The way you get rid of those hairs that cause the stinging is that you boil it slightly or you dry it out. So the boiling slightly would be the blanching effect. So you put it in the hot water for a few minutes and then into cold water quickly. So that will neutralize the hairs that cause the stinging. And then you can use stinging nettle for, you know, any skin rashes and stuff like that, or inflamed, irritated skin. And then you can also make a wash from the water that you have soaked it in. So if you have inflamed skin, you put it in a little tub and you just constantly bathe it. So that being soaked and washed by this water will have a calming, soothing effect, but it will also cause an anti-inflammatory action, and then it will neutralize whatever it is happening on your skin. If you have rosacea or those types of things, it's also good for that. Or you can make a tea from the stinging nettle and drink it. The other one that you find that is mainly termed a herb, but this is actually a weed, is called yarrow. So yarrow has this type of leaf that comes in lots of clumps, and it has like this pretty white flower. And yarrow is so amazing because it actually stops bleeding. So if you dry this out and you have a powder and you sprinkle the powder over, if you just had a severe cut or whatever, it will stop the bleeding immediately. It's astringent and antiseptic also. So it will clean the wound. So you can also use it in water and then just bathe the area to clean the wound. And astringent, as you know, is like a toner. So it basically sucks out the dirt and then it closes up the pores. So it does the same thing with if you have a cut or whatever. It will suck out the dirt and it will try and close up the area. So that's what yarrow can do. And it also reduces the inflammation caused by whatever, that is the antiseptic property of it. And so you can use it in a poultice, you can dry this out also and use it in creams and compresses as well, and you can make a tea from it and drink it. It is always best to put it directly on the skin if you're using it for a cut or something. But if you're using it as an anti-inflammatory tool for whatever inflammation you might have in your body, drinking it as a tea is best. So another one is wood sorrel. Wood sorrel is basically a syrup. And we always know this by its sour taste. And we always used to say the dogs pee on it, that's why it's so sour. But actually, it has acetic acid in it. And that is what gives it that sour taste. But it's actually quite good for you. And this used to be used for scurvy because it's very rich in vitamin C. So when the guys were on the ship for months and months and months, they used to get a lot of scurvy. This is what they would use for the scurvy. And scurvy is sort of like a form of shingles. So this you can also use for shingles. Okay, and other like blisters, fever blisters, those types of things, you can also use this. You can also eat it. Serums, they come in pretty flowers, you get pink, you get yellow, you get white. So now I'm going to speak about the respiratory uses of weeds. They can help support your lung function, they can clear congestion and irritated airways, and they can help reduce inflammation that can cause the congestion or whatever respiratory problem you might have. So the different effects that they can have is expectorant effect. That basically is when they loosen up the phlegm in your chest and they help you expel it. So either coughing or sometimes vomiting for children, but it basically will break up whatever mucus you have on your chest and get it out of you. Then anti-inflammatory actions by reducing the inflammation. This is normally for asthma and so forth. If you're having difficulty breathing, because there could be stuff that's causing the airways to constrict, that is also what it can help with. And then it has a demulcent property. Some say demulcent or demulcent. That basically means it soothes away mucus and it sort of coats the membranes. So for example, if you've had a terrible rasping cough and after the cough you are so sore and breathing is difficult, taking something that is a decalcent will then soothe. So sometimes when you have those cough mixtures and you drink it after you've had a terrible coughing spree, it has that soothing effect and you're like, that is also what these weeds can do for your respiratory function. And then it has antimicrobial benefits, which just means it inhibits or it stops whatever is causing the inflammation that you have in your chest. So you can use this in teas, in inhalation systems, you can use it as lozenges, you can use it as poultices on the chest as well. So as the lady mentioned, mullein is one of those plants, and one of those weeds. They have a big fat leaf like this, but it's very soft and a bit fatter. You can also use it for toilet paper, actually. If the leader rises. But it basically is an expectorant, so it basically will break up the mucus and let it out, and then it will also, it's decalcent, so it will soothe the membranes as well, and it will just improve the inflammation situation that you have in your chest, and it will ease your cough also. So you can make a tea from it, you can dry it up and make lozenges from it. You can also do some inhalation, steam inhalation with it, which is basically just hot water over it and then a towel over your head and you breathe it in like that. So there's many different ways that you can also make a tincture if you want to. A non-alcoholic tincture, you can use glycerin. That will also draw out the juice in there. Because a tincture is a more concentrated form versus if you're just using a decoction with water. And you can also use it over a very long time, so for a few years, and you can store it and use it whenever you need it. Yarrow again. This is also very good for chest inflammation. Because it's astringent, it then also helps with whatever is causing the issue in your airways. It will reduce that. It will also help reduce the secretion of mucus and so forth. So you can make, you can sniff on yarrow, some people like they roll it into a ball and they put it in their nose, and that also then releases it as you breathe in or whatever. It then goes into your nasal passageways, and that also helps clear it. That's also one way that you can use it. You can use it in infusions, in teas. You can breathe it in through steam distillation, or a compress is what you can also use and put it directly on the chest if you want to rid the body of the mucus, if there's a lot of mucus buildup. Then there's...
Sorry, do you get that also at the nursery? Or?
Yes, you can get all of these at the nursery. They don't have a lot of it because weeds aren't really, what people are looking for. But you can get it at the nursery because it's also known as a herb. So yarrow is everywhere you can get it. But it's a very, very good plant to have. And then stinging nettle can also help with the inflammation in your respiratory tract. So you could then also use it as a tea or make a poultice and put it on your chest. It also helps with rhinitis. So coughs, colds, flus, that is what it can also really help with. So if you can't get to a doctor, use stinging nettle. You can also use it as a supplement format. So you can combine it with other herbs, dry it into a powder and combine it with other herbs just to boost your immune system. That is also what you can do.
I put it in my soup.
Okay.
Because obviously we put it like anything of boiling water then. So I put like my celery and all of that. Like I first blanch it with hot water and then I chop it up and everyone thinks it's parsley in the soup and nobody knows any better.
There you go, making it healthy.
And they give you the benefit of it.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great idea for winter to keep the colds and flus away in your soup. I've actually never heard of it in soup before.
I just thought you can eat it. So
Yes,
why
that is amazing. You can eat it in salads also, but you have to first you have to neutralize the gas. Okay, so yeah, you can use it as spinach also. And then plantain you can also use for respiratory problems. It opens up the chest, the airways. So this is especially good for asthma. or if you're having an asthmatic attack, or for whatever reason something has caused your windpipe to close. Sometimes it might be an allergic reaction to something. Plantain is good to use in those instances because it has an anti-inflammatory effect. It also has demulcent properties, so it will also soothe the airways as well as bringing up the mucus or whatever's on the chest. And you can then use it in teas, infusions, and so forth, but you can also make a syrup from it. So how you do that is you just add a little honey and you let it stand. And then it will draw into a syrup, and that syrup you can then drink for those types of events that happen, because they call it an event. When you have asthmatic attack. And so it's very important to know what herbs is around you that you can actually use for emergency purposes. And these grow everywhere, especially plantain. It's like nasturtiums. It just grows crazy, wild, and everywhere. So it's got amazing properties that you can use. And then I want to talk about nasturtiums. So nasturtiums is also an expectorant, which means it brings it out, it breaks up the mucus, it helps with whatever infections you might have. It helps with asthma also, and it naturally just boosts your immune system. So you can make it into a compress, you can make it into a tea, you can put it in your food. Every single part of the nasturtium you can eat. This is the nasturtium, it's got beautiful flowers. The flowers you can also eat. When you break this off, it has like a peppery smell. Very nice peppery smell.
I just feel this out and throw it in the bin.
Oh, okay. Well, now you know. You can eat every single part of it. The leaves you can use as spinach, you can use it for decoration purposes, as cupcakes, and you can fill it with whatever filling you want to. Put it in the oven. The flowers you can use as decoration, but also to make iced teas, those types of things. The seeds, there's a seed here.
So these
This is how to see it.
The flowers is different colors.
Yes, yes. They give, orange, yellow, red sometimes. Beautiful colors. This is how the seed looks. The seed you can also pickle, or you can make it into capers. There's various different ways that you can eat the seed. Every part of the nasturtium is edible, but you can also now use it for the various health benefits that it can give you. And if your chest is like congested, this is also a good way to uncongest it, basically. So you can make decoctions, teas, compresses. Those are the different ways you can use nasturtiums. And then the next thing I want to talk about, oh, here's a ladybug. Wow, yellow one.
You can buy it.
My goodness, it came off. You see how the nasturtiums are attracted these things. It's a baby one, very beautiful. So another thing that also helps with respiratory problems is the malva plant. They grow in different forms. You get them in a tree, different types of trees. They have different leaves. One is like this. Well, the shape is basically like this, but one feels like that, the other one feels more furry. And then you get the one that grows very wild, in little bunches everywhere. So basically, that also has anti-inflammation properties, so it will help whatever respiratory problems you have. It's a decalcitant. So basically, if you have a lot of mucus on your chest, it breaks it up and it brings it up. It also helps with whatever inflammation. So if you have tonsillitis or your chest is burning or whatever the case may be, malva will also help with that. So malva is also known as the marshmallow tree because in the early 1900s, children were getting a lot of tonsillitis and throat infections and stuff like that. And they were too young to take the medication that was around at the time. And so they used the root of the malva tree because when you cook it, it becomes recalcitrant. So it becomes like a mucusy, thick thing.
So is mallow and malva the exact same thing?
It's the exact same thing. And so that is what they made marshmallows from. So if you dry that out, that what you've cooked up, you dry it out, you can add little whatever ingredients, dry it out and it becomes a marshmallow. And that is what the children actually ate as the antibiotic to soothe their throat and to heal.
And so much better than the crap we're buying then.
Yeah, so you can also use it as a thickener in your soups and replace it for gelatin
I read about
sometimes.
it somewhere, but it said a specific, it didn't say any malva.
It said mallow, so I thought mallow is very American. Where can I get this herb?
Yes,
But Riemann, it's here.
the malva, but it must be the root. So the root is what makes the
Not the leaves.
marshmallow. And so the roots mainly come from the big trees, those that grow very big. That is what you could mainly use because the small ones they just grow everywhere. Their roots is not going to be very big, so it's not going to make a lot of, ingredients for you. So it would be better to use from the big tree root. But the leaves and stuff you can also sort of use in that format.
Okay.
So mallow is a great antibiotic for kids.
We had it all along.
And you can try to make your own marshmallows from
That's so expensive. Other health food shops, I won't say which one because I guess they're also making business. But if you buy like a little box of dried mallow root like that, it's over 100 rand.
So you can use your weeds for your own medicine. Okay, you just need to know how to use it and what is best is if you grow your weeds on the outer borders of your garden.
Yeah.
That will then act as barriers and companion plants and help protect, your vegetables. But also you are growing your medicine in between your herbs. So that is also, try to incorporate a permaculture approach to your garden, which is where you grow all types of things together so that they have symbiosis basically in the ecosystem. Because this is the type of thing that happens when you have a permaculture garden. So don't just think, oh yes, weeds, I must pull it out, I must clean up my bed. Weeds are beneficial in some ways.
As
You
long
just
as you
need to
just know what each
Yes,
weed is.
exactly. So knowledge is power. You need to know which weeds are good and which weeds are not. And how you can use them. Is it food? Is it medicine? Or must I just leave it to help the soil health? So these things are really important to know about the weeds. So now I'm going to talk about joint pain. Winter's coming up, so lots of people will be experiencing a lot of joint aches and pains, and you can use your weeds to help you. So these weeds have natural anti-inflammatory properties. They are analgesic, and they have muscle relaxing properties. So once again, plantain. Plantain has amazing anti-inflammatory properties. It is also analgesic, which means it takes pain away. So you can use it for joint pain, for muscle pain, for any type of pain. Plantain can also be used. It will also soothe whatever inflammation is happening. So if you have muscle pain, it will soothe it, calm it. If your muscle is spastic or something, it can also help with that. You can make poultices or infusions. Infusions won't work as well because joints are normally topically on the outside. So you want to get whatever you are using as close to the area as possible. From inside works well also, but you want to try and get it, immediately because it will take a while from the inside. So you can use it as a tea infusion, But a poultice is the best way to use stuff for joint and muscle pain. Then you can also use yarrow. So yarrow, try and get that into your garden. It has antispasmodic, so if you're having serious muscle cramps, or if you have things that cause a lot of muscle cramps, lots of people suffer from muscle cramps or tics or anything like that. Yarrow is a very good plant for that. And then it's a mild analgesic, so it does sort of also help with the pain. And so you can use it as a compress and an infusion, and you can use the flowers, the leaves, the roots, every part of the yarrow can be used for this when you're making a compress or something. And you can use it as a herbal tea. Then once again, stinging nettle. Stinging nettle, we spoke about before, where it can cause that irritation when you are hitting yourself with it or just touching it. That will have that effect on your joints especially. So they say people that have arthritis, especially bad, try and get yourself hit or knocked by stinging nettle very often, because it will boost that anti-inflammatory effect, which will then bring a lot of healing to the area, and that will also help heal the pain, the stinging nettle as well. And so it will definitely help a lot of people with the arthritis. Then you can also drink it as a tea, and you have to obviously then get rid of the hairs, which will be neutralized in the water when you are making it into a tea. And as she suggested, put it in your soups and try and incorporate it in as many of your stews and stuff as possible if you do have arthritis issues or muscle pain issues or whatever the case might be. You can also make a tincture. So you can just soak it in some either alcohol or glycerine, and then you just use a little bit of it in whichever, like during the year. You can use it as a cough mixture, you can use it as, a pain remedy, you can use it for whatever pain purposes or spasmodic muscle issues or arthritis. So you can also keep that and store it in your cupboard for future use. And then nasturtiums can also be used for joint pain. So compresses is the best, but you can also make it into tea. It reduces inflammation and it helps with blood circulation. So in your blood is all your fighting antibodies, and it brings the oxygen and it brings all the nutrients that is needed for healing. So if you ever have something that is happening at the time, try to heat it. If it's not a cut or something, try to heat it. That will induce circulation, because the body is feeling, oh, something's happening here, I need to go and heal. So it rushes to the area and it brings new oxygen, which causes speedy recovery. It brings the nutrients that is needed to heal, and also the antibodies, which will then fight whatever infection might happen from your cut or injury or whatever. So do that, and then you use your remedies, whichever one you want to use, whether it's nasturtiums, stinging nettle, whatever. These are all the different types of weeds that we can use for our different ailments. So I hope that was beneficial, and I hope that you learned a lot.
You didn't mention marigolds.
Marigolds,